The pick is in.
The Memphis Grizzlies have made their selection in the 2024 NBA Draft. I'm Kylan Mills, and we are now joined by Locked On Grizzlies host Joe Mullinax to break down his team's pick. With the 9th overall selection, the Memphis Grizzlies have chosen Zach Edey out of Purdue. And this is presented to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. All right, Joe. I think it was clear, or at least to a lot of folks, it was clear the Memphis Grizzlies were going to bring in a big. They need to bring in a rookie who could be physical right away. You pick up Zach Edey, 2-time National Player of the Year, 7'4". He's got 300 pounds to throw around out there in the paint. What is your initial reaction to this team bringing in Zach Edey?
As somebody that was really into Donovan Clingan, I'm a little bit disappointed, right? There was that moment on X where there was like the Grizzlies are trading to 6 to get Clingan. It's like, oh, right. It was a celebration. And then that 90 seconds was taken away from me. But I do think that they checked a box, right? Memphis is unique among these lottery teams. They're not a group that's trying to rebuild. They're trying to contend for a championship now. That's what I've been talking about on Locked On Grizzlies just about every day. Are you trying to win a championship or not? Center was the most glaring need. They probably got the second best center in the draft in Zach Edey. He dominated Clingan in the national championship game. Granted, college basketball is a little bit different than the NBA, but he has the size. He has offensive skill. He's one of the best screeners, if not the best screener in this draft. He's going to create a lot of room for Morant and Desmond Bane to operate. That's a plus.
The rise of Zach Edey has been interesting to watch in the college basketball scene. A year ago, not even an NBA draft lottery pick, now a top 10 selection, improved the rebounding this season, improved some of the defending from outside underneath the basket. I think there definitely was some major strides made there. But when you watch his game, are there any concerns about some aspects of it translating to the NBA?
Well, the fact that he's a 7'4" Jonas Valanciunas, right? And I've seen Jonas Valanciunas in the past for these Memphis Grizzlies, right? I've seen Steven Adams, and there's pros and cons to this, right? When the Grizzlies were their best as a regular season team, who was their starting center? It was Steven Adams, a 7'2", legitimate big man, a great screener, great rebounder. You add in Zach Edey on a cost-controlled rookie contract. He's ready to go. He's not some young guy who hasn't played a lot of basketball. He can contribute now. The concern is, what can he do in the playoffs, right? Because we saw Jonas Valanciunas get played off the court. We saw Steven Adams get played off the court in a playoff series. In the Western Conference, I don't know if you noticed this or not, it's not getting any easier out west, right? So while Memphis should rise back up into the playoff picture, how are they going to be versatile defensively, offensively? Is Edey's game malleable enough to fit different styles? Or is this just one piece of a larger puzzle for the Grizzlies offseason? The latter is probably the case, but as of right now, it's just Zach Edey who's filling that role, and that's cause for at least some questions to be asked about when the other shoe is going to drop.
Well, when you're talking about Zach Edey's fit and how he's going to work with this system, one thing that was key for him at Purdue was having three-point shooters around him. The Boilers had one of the best three-point shooting percentages in the country this past season en route to that national title game. The Grizzlies certainly have room to improve when it comes to that perimeter shooting. What pieces also need to fall in place besides Edey for you to feel like this is really a contending team?
I appreciate you being so kind and nice to the Grizzlies when saying there's room for improvement. They were one of the very worst teams shooting the three-point ball
I'm putting it nicely, season. All right, Joe? I'm not going to throw you under the bus here.
Oh, well, my head's too big. It wouldn't fit. But I think that the biggest irony with this is they also were top 5 in the NBA in shooting the three. So they were number 5, I believe, exactly in terms of three-point attempts per game, but they were one of the worst three-point shooting percentage teams. They do have Desmond Bane. They do have some room to make some additions. Gigi Jackson had a career year. It was his rookie year, but comparing it to college ball and even high school, he had never shot the three as well as he did in his first year at Memphis. Vince Williams Jr. is there. Jaren Jackson Jr. has that capacity. So there are some pieces in place. And again, the Edey selection here makes it more likely that they're able to do some things with other shooters in the mid-level exception, maybe some other trade. And Luke Kennard's team option, which is up in a couple of days, that figures into this as well. Kennard is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, but Memphis has to make a decision whether or not they're going to opt into his last year of his deal.
All right, well, Joe, thanks so much for the insight. Zach Edey officially joining the Memphis Grizzlies. Will be very interesting to see exactly how that fit shakes out. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me, of course.
Purdue's Zach Edey was college basketball's most dominant player the last 2 years. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten. Zach Edey is a legitimate 7'4", a sturdy 300 pounds, and he's got a wingspan of 7 feet 11 inches. He averaged 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game for the Boilermakers this year, and he's the 2-time National Player of the Year. His numbers coming out of college are comparable to Shaq's at LSU, but his game is more like Yao Ming's. If this draft were 20 years ago, this kid would be the number 1 pick. There's no question about it. But today's NBA game is full of shooters of all sizes on the perimeter. The one thing Zach Edey struggles with is shooting on the perimeter. In fact, he made just 1 3-pointer in his entire college career, and that was this year against Indiana, and he banked it in garbage time. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be as curious as anybody to see how he's used in the NBA, but I clearly think there's a place for him if he goes to the right team. For more on Zach Edey and all things Big Ten, follow and subscribe to Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Also, for more on the Memphis Grizzlies, you can subscribe to Locked On Grizzlies on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. And for continuing coverage of the 2024 NBA Draft, subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.